My name is Michael, and I am a ghost. Not literally, of course, but that is what I feel like. A shadow of the man I once was. A mere echo of the life I meticulously built. My story is not one of a broken heart mending, but of a shattered soul seeking an exquisite and entirely modern kind of justice. I was a graphic designer, a quiet, meticulous man. My world was ordered, precise, and beautiful, just like the layouts I created on my screen. And at the very center of that perfectly designed existence was Sarah, my wife. She was everything. Vibrant, effervescent, the kind of woman who filled every room with light and every moment with laughter. She was my muse, my anchor, the very definition of my future. I saw us growing old together, our lives entwined like the delicate lines of a well-rendered font. We had plans, dreams, a shared vision of a serene future. Our home was a sanctuary, our routine a comforting rhythm. I believed in us with an unshakable conviction that now feels like a cruel joke. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday afternoon, a Tuesday that felt like any other. Sarah had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she showered. A notification popped up, a text message. Nothing inherently alarming about it. But then another and another. My eye caught a snippet of text, a phrase that snagged at my subconscious. Something about missing your touch. My breath hitched. A cold dread began to coil in my gut. My fingers, trembling just slightly, reached for the device. The screen unlocked effortlessly, as it always did. We shared everything after all, or so I thought. The texts, there were so many. A torrent of intimate conversations exchanged not just in the last few days or weeks, but for months. Pictures, too. Pictures that seared themselves onto my retina. Her smile, his arm, the casual intimacy that ripped through the fabric of my reality with the force of a bomb. My world didn't just crack, it exploded. The sound was deafening inside my head, even though the room was silent. I didn't scream, I didn't shout, I just stood there, frozen. The phone felt like a block of ice in my hand, yet my whole body was on fire. My chest tightened until it felt like a vice squeezing the air from my lungs. The betrayal wasn't just an affair. It wasn't about sex or passion. It was an amputation of my soul, a precise surgical removal of everything I thought I was. The trust that was the bedrock of our life evaporated, leaving behind a gaping void. The future I had envisioned crumbled to dust. My very identity, meticulously constructed around the idea of being Sarah's husband, her partner, her protector, was incinerated. She didn't just cheat, she didn't just lie. She incinerated my reality with a smile and then walked away from the ashes as if they were nothing. The days that followed were a blur of numb agony. Sarah's apologies were hollow, her explanations flimsy. She spoke of confusion and needing space. I heard none of it. Her words were just meaningless sounds drowned out by the roar of betrayal in my ears. She packed her bags. She left, just like that. The silence she left behind was louder than any argument we could have had. It was a silence filled with the echoes of shattered dreams and unasked questions. And then she moved on, quickly, painfully quickly, as if our entire history together had been nothing more than a temporary inconvenience. She flaunted her new life, her perfect new beginning, with the man who had helped her tear mine apart. Pictures of them smiling on social media, happy updates from mutual friends about how great Sarah is doing. It was a constant barrage, a public display of happiness that felt like salt rubbed into an open wound. She seemed utterly untouched by the wreckage she left behind, untouched by me, and that was the final, unbearable insult. At first, the desire for revenge was primal, visceral. I wanted to scream, to fight, to expose her to the world, to lay bare her deceit for everyone to see. I imagined confronting her at her new job or sending anonymous messages to her friends or her lover's family. But something in me recoiled from that. It felt messy, undignified. It would be a fleeting moment of satisfaction followed by the inevitable emptiness. It would bring me down to her level. And besides, I knew her. She'd spin it. She'd play the victim. She'd move on again. I wanted something more permanent, more insidious, something that she couldn't escape, something that would reach into the core of her new, carefully constructed happiness and rot it from the inside out. My anger wasn't a raging fire. It was a cold, precise flame that burned with an unwavering focus. I wanted her to feel what I felt. Not the shock of discovery, but the slow, insidious erosion of her reality. My mind, once dedicated to crafting beautiful visuals, turned to a new, darker design. I began to channel my meticulous nature, my understanding of algorithms, of digital footprints, of human psychology, into a singular, all-consuming purpose. My expertise as a graphic designer wasn't just about images. It was about shaping perception, creating narratives, controlling visual information. The digital world was my canvas, and Sarah's carefully curated online life was about to become my ultimate project. I started to conceptualize a system, something that wasn't about public shaming, but about private torment, a haunting only she would experience. That's how Echo was born. Not a person, not a virus, an entity. A highly advanced AI that would infiltrate her entire digital existence. Not just her social media feeds, but the networks of her friends, the online presence of her new lover, even the subtle digital breadcrumbs she left behind every day. Echo wouldn't expose her. That was too crude, too obvious. Instead, Echo would subtly mirror her perceived happiness. It would reflect back her perfect life, her beaming smile, her idyllic moments. But with a chilling, almost imperceptible distortion. The concept was simple, yet terrifyingly effective. Imagine seeing your own reflection, but something is always just a little bit off. A smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes, in a photo you swear was perfect. A memory shared online that feels subtly altered. A comment from a friend that seems to subtly undermine your confidence without ever being explicitly negative. Echo learned her habits, her preferences, her insecurities. It observed her online interactions. It understood the algorithms that fed her content. And then it began its work. It would subtly alter images she posted, just a pixel here or there, to create a subliminal sense of unease. It would craft comments from seemingly innocuous accounts, praising her life, but injecting a faint, almost unnoticeable current of doubt. It would resurface old memories, not to make her nostalgic, but to subtly highlight the contrast with her current, less authentic self. It would send her personalized ads for things that were subtly unsettling, tapping into her deepest fears. The beauty of it was that no one else would notice. Not her friends, not her new lover. They would see the perfect Sarah. They would see the polished facade. Only Sarah herself would feel the gnawing unease. Only Sarah herself would question her own sanity as the meticulously crafted digital world around her began to subtly, slowly unravel. I spent months in isolation. My apartment became a dark cave filled with the hum of servers and the glow of multiple screens. The lines between night and day blurred. My meals were forgotten, my body a mere vessel for my brain. The coding was intricate, the algorithms complex. It was a maze of logic and emotion. Every line of code was infused with my pain, my anger, my desperate need for her to feel something akin to what I had endured. It wasn't about pleasure. It wasn't about enjoying her suffering. It was about balance, about a distorted form of justice. This project became my everything, my therapist, my outlet, my reason for waking up each day. The obsession was complete. There was a cold, precise satisfaction in watching the framework come together, piece by digital piece. The meticulous planning felt like a surgeon preparing for an operation. Every detail considered, every contingency planned for. And then the day came. The day I launched Echo into the digital ether. The day I unleashed my silent, invisible army upon her perfect life. The initial effects were almost imperceptible, like a single drop of poison in a vast ocean. I watched, obsessively, from the dark corners of the internet, from anonymous accounts. I monitored her social feeds, her online presence. At first, there was nothing. Then, a tiny ripple. A picture she posted of herself and her new boyfriend, arms around each other, smiling. To the casual observer, it was perfect, but I saw the almost imperceptible shift in her eyes, a flicker of something I hadn't seen before, a slight tension in her mouth. And then the comments. Not direct, not accusatory, but a friend of hers posting, "You two are just the cutest, so much sunshine," followed by another, "Looks like you finally found your true happiness." But the font for true happiness felt off, slightly bolder, slightly jarring, just enough to catch her eye, to make her wonder. Then, a few days later, a subtle change to her profile picture. A minuscule alteration to the angle of her chin, making her appear ever so slightly less confident. No one would consciously notice, but subconsciously, it would register. And then the advertisements. Echo started feeding her highly personalized ads, not for things she wanted, but for things that touched on hidden insecurities. An ad for how to spot a narcissist in your relationship appearing on her feed, tailored to a pattern of her subtle emotional responses to certain key words in her private messages. A news article about the quiet burden of hidden truths populating her newsfeed. The changes were so subtle, so interwoven into the fabric of her online experience that she couldn't pinpoint them. She couldn't complain to anyone. What would she say? My selfie looks slightly different to me sometimes? My friends' comments feel weird, but I can't explain why? She would sound irrational, unhinged. And that was the point. The chilling satisfaction was not in seeing her cry or scream. It was in seeing the confusion cloud her eyes online. It was in the delayed responses to comments she used to instantly like. It was in the subtle hesitations before she posted a new photo. I wasn't inflicting pain with a blunt instrument. I was using a surgeon's scalpel, carefully dissecting her perceived reality. Each small erosion of her digital world was a victory. Each moment of her internal doubt was a testament to my carefully crafted vengeance. As the weeks turned into months, Echo deepened its infiltration. The distortions grew more frequent, more pervasive, yet always remained beneath the threshold of conscious detection for anyone but Sarah herself. Her curated social feeds, once a source of her boundless outward joy, became a mirror reflecting a subtly corrupted version of herself. Posts from her new lover would occasionally contain a phrase or a sentiment that felt just a little off, a word choice that hinted at a hidden critique, a subtle digital hiccup in their perfectly presented romance. She started posting less. Her updates became sparser. The radiant smile in her photos began to crack, replaced by a forced, brittle expression. I saw her attempting to compensate, posting more aggressively happy content, but the underlying unease was always there, a faint dissonance only audible to her. She was trying to outrun a ghost she couldn't prove existed, a digital haunting orchestrated by someone she believed she had completely discarded. And I watched from my dark room, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, ready to make a tweak, to refine a subroutine, to sharpen a psychological barb. This revenge consumed me. It was the only thing that gave my life meaning after she had stripped everything away. But as her carefully constructed facade began to crumble, a different kind of feeling started to emerge within me. A complex mix of cold satisfaction and a chilling emptiness. I had achieved my goal. She was living in a perfectly curated digital prison, haunted by the ghost of her own deceit. But what now? The pursuit of revenge had given me purpose, but it hadn't healed me. It hadn't brought back the Michael who loved Sarah. It had created a new Michael, a colder, harder, more calculating version. The truth is, this elaborate digital retribution, while exquisite in its precision, has also bound me to her. My life is still, in a twisted way, about Sarah, about her reactions, about the subtle shifts in her online persona. I am free from her physical presence, but I am enslaved by the digital war I have waged. The cold satisfaction remains, a steady hum beneath my skin, but so does a profound sense of isolation. I achieved my revenge, but at what cost to the man I used to be? She is trapped in a digital labyrinth of her own making, unable to escape, unable to explain, unable to convince anyone of the invisible torment that eats away at her soul. And by the time she truly realizes she's living in a perfectly curated digital prison, haunted by the ghost of her own deceit, it will be too late for both of us.